All right, so if we go back to our sniper install, I rewired the engine under the hood. I was perfectly confident with my capabilities and the way it turned out. Nobody hacked that harness before. There was just some poor spots that I fixed. I was okay with that. But a lot of you guys put up a stink and saying, Rich, this caliber of car, you've got a sniper on it, you need a new wiring harness. And Painless, I think, heard you guys and said, Rich, I know we don't make one for a GTO, but we make one for Chevelle and the Camino and trucks and whatever else. So suck it up, put on your big boy pants, and you can adjust our harness to do what it needs to do. So they sent us this 25 circuit kit, and while I was hooking it up, I realized that I could make it do stuff with the Holley that you might have never thought of before, including the tech guys at Holley. Let's get into it. I'm gonna show you guys how to make the most out of both systems. Here we go. Okay, so with this project, starting 4 years ago, we had all good intentions of having the car driving by 2016. So that didn't happen. Neither did 17, neither did Hoogie's wedding in 2018. But new goal, 2019 power tour. Along with this car, Stefano's bringing a car. We're gonna have to stick around for that. But both of our cars are gonna be collectible magnets at the stops to prove that you are a long hauler, which is a huge honor. You gotta button up a few things, you gotta put the glass and interior in it, and yeah, here we go. Okay, so we got the GTO off the hoist. We need a body.
That actually worked pretty good.
Alden says these shocks are so easy to install. Basically just unbolt, bolt on the new ones. So once we get the whole car done in this finish, we're gonna put a ceramic coating on it. While we're at it, why not? Let's just rewire the car. Okay, so we've got our sniper. We got our high rise RPM air gap, but we have a ram air that sits up too high. So gotta drop that down a little bit. What I'm going to do is cut this lip off and grab a piece of ABS that I've made a mount for, stick in my lathe. Chuck it up so that it sits nice on here, and then cut the 5 inches off into there and have it sit on the sniper. Drop it down. First ram air on an EFI on a true GTO. Done. Here we go. Okay, so the car is coming together. These benches are slowly getting empty. And the only thing left is putting in the dash. We ordered a new dash because we couldn't fix up the old one. We tried a couple times, it didn't look right. It was an upgrade to get this faux wood grain. It does screen GTO, but I don't know. I really got to think about this one, whether we want to do that or not. Only issue is this. Because this is the faux pas, but we might be getting a new one of these. We're working on that. I think for now we're just putting it together. I can leave this out, and then we're gonna get into wiring. So we ordered the stickers, which is faux wood grain, and it doesn't really fit the car anymore. So with the center console, we might try and wrap that in the vinyl, but the faceplate for the radio and the shifter are too tight. I can't fold the material around and make that look good. So just some Rust-Oleum. It's kind of by accident, just kind of experimenting. So put a base coat on and put a nice thick second coat on, and then wait about 30 seconds, and then just find a texture that matches what you want, whether it's a sponge or whatever, and then just kind of dab it. See that? Nice little texture. Hold up in the light, one little spot here, and done. So to get your key ring off there, turn your ignition switch all the way to the left, as far counterclockwise as possible. Then take a little piece of MIG wire or a paper clip, and you'll see one little hole there. See the hole? Well, take my word for it, there's a hole there. You feel a little spring action there. Turn it counterclockwise a little bit more, and your lock will come out. Now you can take this ring off I turned it all the way in, and then you can mount it in your dash. Okay, so I've secured the dash to this table, thanks to Fawn. Laid my wiring harness out flat, even though it goes around. I can lay the new fuse box right here, then I know my length is right. I can run all my dash wires. Once I have the dash in place, then I can put that in the car, and then we can start running our different harnesses where they need to go. Very simple. Start at one system and then work your way through the rest, and it's not that difficult. What we've got is connectors, OEM spade connectors, grounds, main feed, tail lights, and side marker lights, and grommets, headlight plugs. You got a fuse box that's already wired with all this wiring. What we're gonna do is lay it out and basically copy the harness that we have, and then leave the wires loose for the engine bay, because we'll reroute those completely. But for the dash, we'll make it a little bit longer. Fuse box will mount in the exact same spot, and then we'll plug it into the back of the gauges, turn everything on. Everything should work first time, right? Here we go. Okay, it's not as bad as it looks. We've got lighting section, we've got an engine section, so we don't have to worry about those right now. And we got one harness that stays inside the cab, and then we just split that up into different sections. So this would be your light switch, and every wire is marked and labeled. These three would be for the wiper. This big bundle would be for your ignition switch. These go to this plug here, so that's your console where your turn signal switch and your horn and stuff goes through. This would be for the gauges. Got a separate one for the radio, and then these would be your cigarette lighters, sensors for the door opening and closing, accessory power, and whatever else. So it's very daunting to look at this and the manual. It's pretty thick. But it's not that bad if you can separate it. It's just no different than looking at the entire project and figuring out how to split everything up. So what I'm gonna do is mount my gauge cluster so I can get in behind. Secured my dash down just with a couple C-clamps and cardboard so I don't scratch it, and then straighten my harness out and figured this is where my fuse box has to go. So I'll make it a bit longer. I'll just bolt this down, put the new fuse box on here, and then I can run the wires individually to wherever they need to go. Start laying our wires. Here we go. Okay, mounted the fuse box, got rid of the wires that I don't need, the tail section and the engine section. Forget about it, they don't exist right now. We've got our steering column wires, and then our wires for our light switch, 3 for the wiper, these for the ignition switch, and then these are all the gauges. 3 for the radio. These ones, don't worry about them for now. So we're going to start here, the simple ones that we know, probably the gauges. We'll start with the single plug-in wires. We'll put the spade connectors in the connectors. Painless even sells the crimpers, proper crimpers for everything. We're on our way. So here we go. What? Could you find a better spot? I got all. And that looks a little better. Nice and neat. What do you think? Did I pass? Do a good job, Katie? Okay. So this is all wired. We've got our just 2 little runs going down to the back of the gauge cluster, and the gauges are all done. We've got the wires going to the steering column. So we'll do that while they're in the car. This goes into the engine bay. This goes into the back of the car. And this looks daunting, but really it's not. It's just a handful of wires, some lights and whatever else. We got the radio hooked up. We'll have to pull the radio back out because it goes through the actual steel dash. A couple things to keep in mind. Have an ohm meter ready so you can verify which plugs do what. You got to remember that a lot of the ignition switches, when you turn into the start position, it cuts power to the accessories. So the coil wire has to have power in the on position and in the start position, otherwise you'll have a no start. So we're ready to throw this in the car, and then we'll continue wiring from there. Here we go. Right, Katie? Oh yeah, you like that, don't you? Sure. Rub up against the dash, put your smell on there. Yeah, keep the mice out. No, hey, don't knock it off the thing though. That's no good. Okay, so we got all the wiring pretty well buttoned up for the dash cluster. and we can test it before we put it on. Just run the main power wire in and then run a couple grounds to here. You can put all the grounds for the dash lights in there. Make sure that those work. You can turn your headlight on to make sure that you get power to your tail light section and your headlight section. And then you can also take your gauges. Once your gauges are powered up, this blue one says oil pressure on it. So if I touch that to ground, we can see our oil pressure gauge is working. Green one here is temperature. Touch that to ground. Your temperature and your oil, you can all check those gauges, make sure that they are working properly before you put it in the car. Tack, I gotta figure out the tack yet. Tack's not doing what I want it to do. I only have one wire, so I'm gonna look that up. But now I know that if I don't have those gauges, then there's an issue somewhere else. So now we've done that, I know that these wires are good. I'll loom the back of this, just the sections that I don't want to touch anymore, that I know work properly, and then we'll put it in the car. So here we go. Okay, separated into dimmer switch, courtesy light stuff, back wiring, front wiring. So we'll shove that through a grommet right there, and then mount the fuse box, and then we'll worry about this and this, and then we'll go from there. Here we go. Okay, so we've got the wiring separated now. We've got our engine compartment with our steering console. We've got our brake wires to the brake switch. We've got our wires going to the back for the taillight section. That includes the wire for the fuel sending unit. This blue wire is for the EFI fuel pump, which goes to a relay, and the Painless already has a fuel pump wire, so that will trigger that relay to turn the fuel pump on. We've got our neutral safety, our reverse. Purple wire is the big one that goes to the starter, so that'll be going to the neutral safety and then back out again. Dome light, there's a little light in the back of the console, and the light for the shifter. Then at the back here, I just separated the wires. Left turn signal assembly, right turn signal, brake and tail light, dome light, reverse light, license plate light, one other one that's supposed to go down there somewhere. And then the front, basically I just ran the wires over roughly to where I think they're gonna be. These are the left, these are the right wires for the right taillight assembly. The horn is on the driver's side here yet. And then the engine wires I took and just laid on top of the engine, and that's my coolant temperature, my engine oil, my tack, and my coil wire. We're gonna start by mounting the shifter and running those wires nice and neat because those aren't loomed up there yet. Put our console in place, make sure that's where we want it, and then we are good to go. Okay, with this being the main harness, I did cover it up, but I'll probably run it in between the two insulations so it doesn't stick out of the floor like crazy. These wires I'll put on top of the insulation, and they're going to run into the console. The speaker wires I'll run on top of the insulation underneath the carpet. We're going to put that insulation in there. It's off Amazon. Sticky on one side, sticks very good. You buy a big roll of it and it comes in little rolls like that, which is actually easier to lay it down, cut a little square out where the rails are going to go, shifters in, bolt it down. We'll stick a little bit of insulation underneath that. So here we go. It goes so nice and easy. You see it sticks to it's very sticky. It follows the contours enough that you can almost see the bead rolls. Highly recommend this to anybody. Okay, we've got our wiring pretty well buttoned up other than our courtesy light and a couple wires. That's the wire for the sensor. We'll tuck those up nicely once we have everything. Those are the courtesy lights, so we'll be putting some lights underneath here and in the console. We're gonna lay the front carpet in so that we can get our console mounted and go from there. I did the same texture, which turned out pretty nice on the shifter here. I don't know if I have time before we leave or not. I'm gonna take the same material as our back wind tray, whatever, and I'm gonna wrap this in the material. That will look the same as this dash up here and the back window. This trim will match this trim and the armrest or the console here. It gives a little bit of contrast. I like this matching this and this matching this, and not everything being the exact same color. Okay, so the engine wiring is about as straightforward as we can. So we just basically got one run going to the battery, and I'm gonna have a relay, a little box in the corner here tucked out behind the battery. We ran the wires just underneath the brake booster and then come around for your temperature sensor and the alternator, and that'll tie in. We're getting a new alternator from Holley, so I don't have to run an external regulator. Less wiring, one wire to go in, perfect. The important thing to remember is if your key switch does not have a spot where the ignition is powered during run position and start position, you need to run a wire, which is this little guy right here, from the R on the starter. So as your starter engages, it will power up that wire, which will power up the ignition and the EFI system while you're cranking. Very important, otherwise you'll have a no start. Okay, so to get our painless to talk with our Holley, with the EFI we get 10 pins that come out to a plug, and those will run electric fans. So we've got 2 fans. So we'll have one come on a certain temperature, the other one come on another temperature. The light green and the light blue are for the fan controls. They're already preset, and you can use your screen to adjust whatever temperatures you want them to come on and off. And those get controlled by the negative on the relay. But it also has an AC compressor on and off on this, and that is your AC kick down, so that when you rev the snot out of your car, you're not gonna over rev the AC compressor. You're like, okay, you're worried about smoking your tires, not really worried about cold air right now, we have to shut the AC compressor off. So we can tap into the AC out, which is pin number 6, and it is a gray wire. That's a negative wire coming out, but I can use that to turn a relay on. So a relay is very simple, 5 plugs, but you only need to worry about 4 of them. So 85 and 86, one is negative, one is positive, and either one of those can be switched to connect 87 to 30. So 87 would be your out and your 30 would be in. So you can use a tiny bit of current to control a large amount of current. So by using the Holley on a negative ground, we have positive coming already. You can actually jump 86 to 30 if you want, or just give it a separate positive, and then use the number 6 negative wire for the AC kick down to power up 85. The power coming out is gonna go right to your kick down solenoid, your one solenoid on the Turbo 400. So when you step on it, it'll downshift the transmission for you. If you wire it up wrong and it's not shifting into 3rd gear, it could have power all the time, and you just disconnect the wire and make sure that you have 3rd gear then. So the nice thing about using the Holley to do the kick down on the transmission is you can use the TPS off the side of the sniper, and you can set that at whatever TPS position that you want, whether it's 50% or 100%. It gives you that much more tunability, and it's all on your little touch screen. Same thing with the fans. You can use the sniper to turn the fans on whatever temperature you want. Because we're in Pontiac and it's an older engine, we're gonna get the fans to turn on a little bit earlier. I think it was programmed at 190, the second fan. I dropped it down to 180 to try and keep it. It's much easier to keep it cool rather than have a hot engine and try to bring it back down again. Just things to consider, but simple little things with the wiring and the Holley does make this car much more drivable and reliable at the same time. Hoogie got it looking real nice underneath here. Wiped it all nice and clean. Got our alternator proper, we got our power steering proper, got a water pump proper, we've got 2 electric fans mounted, which will hook up to the sniper. And I like that space. I need to paint this this thing yet. The fans are actually mounted to the sides here, not to the radiator themselves. There's a little gap there, but not much. You want to have the fans as tight as you can to the radiator, because otherwise it'll actually pull air from around the outside. The air doesn't actually want to go through the fins because it'll take the path of least resistance. So you have to kind of force the air through the rad, and the fans really only do their thing when you're stuck in traffic not moving. When you're going down the highway, you're getting lots of air being forced through the radiator. It's the fans that kick on, either when your AC is on or when you're not moving. So I imagine we'll be in traffic for a bit. Wiring is coming along fine. I don't think there's any other wiring that I need. This one is actually for my washer. Painless recommends running relays if you're running halogen lights. So my solution to that was to get some LED lights. And we got these from Oxbeam, which look pretty cool with the halo on that. Unfortunately, they're too big and they don't fit in my socket. So I gotta send these back. I've got enough working old ones. We're gonna put some relays in. Painless splits the wiring right here to go into two for your left and your right. I just took the one wire out, recrimped these with shrink. I'm gonna tuck them down underneath to turn the relay on and then turn those lights on and that light on. Turn signal and parking light you can still run through your normal wires. Obviously my horn is down below there. I put the relays down below here, tucked underneath my washer bottle. The washer bottle slides right out. And then you don't see them. I got a 100 amp fuse with the Painless kit. The problem is that this alternator puts out 150 amps. So we pop that fuse if there's a high demand. So as long as this wire is covered up nice and never rubs through, we won't burn the car up in a spectacular fashion. But I'm gonna run all my relays through that 100 amp fuse in case there's a problem with the fans or whatever else. So pretty straightforward. Painless gives you a ground for the lights. So it plugs into the ground for each light, connected nicely, and then to a chassis ground, and they do one for the tail light section as well. So I'll run those neat, and then I'll add these wires to that loom because those are already pre-made and pre-butt connected together. I'm limited to whatever they did, and then I'll add my loom, whether that goes on the top or along the rad support or wherever that goes, we'll do that. I put the wires in already long enough to where they need to go. I just got to put the ends on it, and then I've marked them already. So some get turned on with power, some get turned on with ground. So you just gotta, I'm tired, so we don't want to mix those up because then things don't work properly. We gotta get this thing safetied so we can actually take it on the road legally. They recommend that you have working lights and turn signals. So here we go. Couldn't be anything else on this truck that I could possibly need except the speedo cable. Let's see if there's still one of those in here. I'm sure it's somewhere. Looks like there's a speedo cable there. Oh yeah, look at that. Oh, that's a good sign. There's that speedo cable. Oh, that goes all the way to the back. Are you kidding me? Yeah. Maybe that one's got a speedo cable. Still spins. I can't get that. I'll worry about speedo after. Alright, so I didn't find my speedo cable, but I forgot I had a whole bunch of stuff in the trunk here, including my turn signal switch. Put that in. As I get my taillights working, I'm going to take it down the road. I did a quick little alignment with making sure I got some toe in. The alignment shop isn't far. So if I've got brake and turn, which would be fantastic, then I can make it to the alignment shop without towing it. Ah, look at that. Oh, that's a beautiful thing. Let's see if we got it right. If we got it right, then we probably have it at the back as well. Look at that. Sweet. I got some taillights going. We'll wire this up quick. I got about an hour and a half before it gets too dark. Ground each housing just to be safe. And we are using Oxbeam LEDs at least. They're a little bit brighter, so that should keep people off our back bumper. It's now dark, but I'm still gonna go. These won't shut off. Even though the key's off, turn signal's off, these lights won't turn off, and that's because my brake switch is probably too far out. So I'll adjust that, and then we're gonna go. say nothing good happens after 7. Made a couple trips, started at about 8 o'clock, went down the road, found a couple small glitches, fixed those, turned around, came back. By the time I got everything kind of sorted, it was about midnight, and I went to the gas station to get some gas. Went from first to second, no problem, car was sounding good, shifted into third, went to the gas station, it's very close by, filled up, went to leave, started making a little bit of a noise that I was like, what is that? That's not a good noise. You know those noises and you just kind of push it off in the back of your head. Then I wouldn't go into third gear. First, second, okay, wouldn't go into third. I found a loose vacuum line on the engine. It's the vacuum line that tells the modulator when to shift or according to engine needs when to shift. So I'm like, okay, put the vacuum line on, no problem. Had to go for an alignment next thing in the morning. Fingers crossed, here we go. Went, still wouldn't shift into second. Turned around, started making a little bit louder of a tick too. Thought maybe they're connected, maybe there's something going on in the transmission. Talked to Joe a little bit, figured out it was the governor. Pulled the governor out. There's a valve in there and that's supposed to move and it's not moving no matter what I do. I think I run to town. I know a good buddy who's got a Turbo 400, see if I can take his governor. And there it is, see it move? That's what we want. In the meantime, put a little bit of Lucas in there. Thought, okay, maybe that'll quiet the engine down. It did, right away, purred like a kitten. Feel the stall was working better. That means the noise was definitely coming from the engine. Took it down the road. Second. Third, yay! And you can hear it in the video, it's starting to knock, and worrisome knock. So the only thing we didn't touch on this car is the engine. If you go back into our very early series, we had the 400. We got the story that it was numbers matching, that it was a low mileage rebuild. It's 30 over because every engine you buy that's Pontiac is 30 over. Super clean and good to go. I'm like, all right, so we didn't open it up. We didn't take the pan off, we didn't take the head off. We kind of assembled the outside, put the car together, put it on the dyno to verify that it worked. A little low on horsepower, which wasn't great. But we thought, okay, the engine's good to go, and that actually set the pace as to where the build was going. If it was a numbers matching car, we'd be building an original car. If it was a Le Mans, something else, we'd have an LS in it, something different. But we now have an engine that is no good. Let me show you. There you go, see that? Some not so much good bits. Pulled the spark plugs out. Heads are fine because my spark plugs are all fine. That's kind of what we're going on. But this bottom end let go. I lost all my bearings. So when I was stuck in second, I did not go past 3,500 RPM. The engine got to about 200, 210, which is still okay for the Pontiac. Reading up on the forums, I think that's okay. You're not moving fast enough and the engine's revving up pretty high. Hopefully that didn't do it. I think this engine was on its way out, I guess. I don't know, we'll never know, but I'm glad it happened now. So we actually met a guy, hopped on some forums, Kijiji, and the guy 15 minutes away has a barn full of Pontiacs. So we picked up a 455. We're gonna grab it tomorrow. There's a completely assembled 400 block that somebody spoke for. If he doesn't grab it by 10 o'clock, we'll probably grab that. If not, we've got a 455 that we're gonna build and put into this. Unfortunately, I can't spend the time on it that I would like to do on it, so it's going to be rings, cleaning, bearings, put it together, cross our fingers, go for a drive, and we'll have to pull it out again one winter and go over the thing properly. But we're getting a new engine. So pull the engine in the morning. I've been going on 2-3 hours of sleep a night, and that's no good. I am done. So if I work 2 hours tonight, I'm going to sacrifice 4 hours tomorrow. So have a good meal and go for a sleep, and then we'll still see you at Power Tour. It might be a day late.
The biggest problem I had with this car is the transmission. It would slip, so I wanted to bring it somewhere where I knew it would get fixed right, so I brought it down here to Joe's. He rebuilt it, so I'm confident that this is gonna be fine. It was overheating, and the carburetor and the whole system just wasn't set right, and I just didn't like it. I didn't like how the car felt, and it would overheat. So I ended up installing fans and a fuel injection system, the Holley EFI. and that's gonna take away all the problems I had with the car. So now I've got new gas lines put in, gone over the whole car. We put a new rear pinion seal in it because that was leaking as well. New tires because they were 20-year-old tires on this thing. They're gonna be really good burnout tires. So we got some new Toyo tires on this, so it's gonna be reliable and safe to drive. I put a new trans cooler on it from Grassroots Performance. Pretty excited about that. Those kits were actually the easiest. It's all the modification. I had to modify this cross member, fit my exhaust in tighter because it was rubbing on the ground. I'd like to do a special thanks to VNR for not seeing me steal this from your yard. So I'm just gonna do a double check of everything because I'm really nervous for starting the car after doing so much work. Check all my fluids, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna check the fuel system, make sure I got no leaks. And if anything happens that I don't like, I'm gonna run Aaron and you're gonna be on your own. That's what I do.
You got your server plugged in? Go.
It's doing stuff. Down to her.
Okay, so with the engine problems, we've narrowed it down to a poor assembly of a fresh rebuild. And by that I mean, I don't think the clearances were checked on the bearings. Very critical for the amount of oil to go in there and lubricate it properly, but not enough that it spills out, creating low oil pressure. So we've destroyed our crank and our 400. It happened very quick. And it wasn't because of lack of oil pressure, it wasn't because it was making noise. We did go on the guy that we bought it off of. He was told that it was a fresh rebuild, and he himself pulled the heads off and inspected everything. He has pictures, we saw pictures of the crosshatch, of very clean pistons, very little carbon on it. I do believe that that engine was not ran very much at all. In hindsight, I should have rolled it over. If he said he took the heads off, I should have taken the pan off and used plastic gauge to check the clearance on the bearings. I did not. We did take it to a dyno. The dyno pushed the engine as hard as we could. I think if we would have done another 3-4 pulls, we would have blew it up on the dyno there. We primed the engine before we put it on the dyno, even though it still took the cam out now. Whether they did that when they installed the engine or rebuilt it the first time, I don't know. When that camshaft let go, we lost a couple lobes. You'll see the highest point there, and I'll just rotate and compare it to the one beside. See that? Just ate it. And then there's another lobe. So you've got good lobe, bad lobe. But it's not because it's a Pontiac. If it was a Chevy, we'd have all the Mopar guys saying it's because it's a Chevy, it's because of this. It was a poorly assembled rebuild, and it was a waste. All that money, I bet you there was $3,000–4,000 rebuild there, and it was all for nothing. It ended up costing us a lot more than that afterwards. So hindsight's 20/20. Now it's going to get a 455, and who doesn't want a 67 GTO with a 455 fuel injected Ram Air Resto Mod Pro Touring car? It sounds pretty good to me. We are doing absolutely everything we can to get on Power Tour. We're exploring every option, which included driving around to 3-4 different people and trying to find different blocks that we can get in here. What we've got right now is a 455 block and crankshaft and connecting rods. We've got parts on order that will be here tomorrow on Friday. Pistons, bearings, rings, oil pump, camshaft, lifters. And the machine shop is working hard to get everything prepped to have a brand new perfect engine. So they are doing the valve seats to get hardened valve seats in the head, cleaning up the block, checking the block. Unfortunately, we ran into a little hiccup where the block needs to be line bored. So that's happening this weekend. And I think I'm gonna be missing the first day at least of Power Tour. Stefan will be there. Him and Aaron are leaving tomorrow, which is Friday. So they'll be there in North Carolina on Saturday. We're honestly trying to find every possible solution that we can to get to where we need to be. But regardless, we've got all our parts, I think. in Canada. They're on trucks. Nothing's being held up at the border, which was a big thing as well. And looks like on the weekend we will get our line bore and we will be going in the beginning of the week. Maybe possibly even Saturday, Sunday. So in the meantime, I've lost some time messing around with all that. Now I can clean up the wiring. We're putting our loom on and tucking everything away. I still just have the glass to do on the driver's side and just the door panels, the dash is together, lights are together, everything else looks good, safety's good to go, and we'll have to do an alignment on the road somewhere. So keep up to date on what's going on Instagram. Aaron's gonna be leaving, so the editing is going to stop for now. He's gonna work hard tonight, but it'll be Instagram and a bunch of other social posts on their side. We'll be stopping for lunch. If you're in the area, we'll let you know, and hopefully we'll see you, if not somewhere on the road, we'll see you at Power Tour. Thanks for watching, guys. Lots of little sleep and lots of work. It's all worth it.